Man, the stories today are good.
Well, everyone that's joining us, welcome to eVENT About It. And let me tell you, some of you have definitely vented this time around.
For sure. Okay, so this
Excited.
came to us anonymously from an AV technical director. And the story is I've always been working on shows events that are predominantly male staff. This is pretty true in the AV world, it's pretty male dominated. This event was no different. Usually, I'm either the TD or the show caller on large events. During one of the events, I was freelancing, working with a new tech crew. We seemed to get along just fine. The setup went fine, everything checked fine, and we were doing one of our internal technical rehearsals with the full AV tech lead all on comms. So, everyone on headphones, for folks that maybe don't know, running Q to Q rehearsals for a multi day conference. After a couple of hours, I called a break for everyone to get a snack before we got back to work at a specific time. Close to that time, I got back on comms and was running through my own checks without announcing to anyone that I was back on comms, as I still had a few minutes to go before we started. To my shocking surprise, I dropped in on a very captivating, I think colorful probably would have been an equally as good word here, conversation behind the scenes where the most trending topic between the AV tech guys, me being the only female on the crew, were my boobs. At that point, I asked, and this is quote, "Hey guys, I'm just curious where this conversation is going because not too long ago on another show in a very similar situation, the topic ended up being my quads. And now we're discussing my boobs. And I'm just curious if my glutes are to be discussed next. Help a girl out. I'm just trying to catch up." End quote. I mean, I think there was a viral story not that long ago of a similar scenario happening in chat, like a video conference chat, and a woman joined. And I think it was a customer actually who caught a bunch of male salesmen discussing her, physical appearance as she was getting on the call.
I think I remember that. Like it made the news, and obviously it called out some of the behavior that it's surprisingly still common behind the
Yeah.
scenes. And even when you think that someone is not on the call while you're waiting to engage or whatever. But yeah, to our story, I mean, working, as I mentioned earlier, in a highly male dominated environment, event productions is known for that. Actually, I was watching some of the C-Event Connect behind the scenes recordings on demand, and I was looking at the behind the scenes video village, and I kid you not, I was just looking for one woman. Show me one woman that is working behind the scenes in Video Village, and I will shut my mouth forever. There was no. So does that foster a bit of an environment where those type of conversations are being had, behind your back or maybe on comm? Which this was a scenario where you were made aware. Oh my gosh, this is what they're talking about. And you're trying to be professional, you're trying to, I'm here to do a job. I came here because there is this role that I know that I can fill because it's right down my alley. I have all the credentials for it. And what should be discussed is the run of show, not the context of my body.
Right.
Right? So I will tell you, like, it has happened to me before on events where, I mean, maybe it wasn't necessarily that like to your face, but people make jokes. It's like, oh, this or that, or make jokes about either your body or parts of your body or a shirt that you would wear that would look one way or another, or maybe something like, oh, I definitely got, remarks about my legs. Like I have strong legs. I mean, thank you very much. I'm a
The best
bodybuilder.
ones.
Yeah,
If
what I
we're
mean?
being
I definitely
honest
put
here.
a lot of weight on those legs because it's intentional and I train for it. I mean, my last leg press was 650 pounds. Just patting myself on the back there a little
Brush
bit.
that off, girl. Take it.
But it's like, those are things that, you're like, you probably don't expect in a professional environment. I mean, you could maybe be joking around at the office because you know your team and there's a bit of a different type of boundary. I guess even there you do need to have boundaries, obviously, but like there's more friendliness around
Of
that.
course.
But I feel like if you're working for the first time with a new team, that is highly offensive. I don't know about you. How would you feel if that was something said about you? I mean, it sounds like the person in this situation, they're trying to be funny. They're trying to like, hey, like in a kind of funny, cheeky way. By the way, I heard what you said. Like, are we taking this to the whole anatomy of my body? Just so I know, you know,
Yeah.
to,
I
to
mean, look,
keep
I
up.
love the clap back. I love the way she handled this because I mean, I probably would not have been so kind in my response and or been put in a situation where maybe I wouldn't have said anything, quite frankly. Like you never really know how you're going to react. So, bravo. I think that's like the perfect answer of like calling them out without necessarily really calling them out. But at some point, I think the follow up to this, like it should have been addressed after the show was over that day, like once everything kind of wrapped and just been like, look, man, like we're all human. I know people are going to talk about it. Women are just as guilty of this as men are. Like when we all get together, I'm sure there's stuff we talk about and say that are like not appropriate.
I don't think we talk
Scenario.
about anatomy parts like guys talk about. I don't think I've ever eardropped on a conversation between my girlfriends or friends that I know that are females to just talk about straight up things like that.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. Like, we're certainly not as colorful as a male conversation. But I think to your point, it's all about knowing your team and the professionalism. Like, I can't imagine saying things like that about a man being on comms. And honestly, when you're on comms, you have no idea who's listening. Like, if you're on show side and you have a radio, anyone could be overhearing or listening, like the bathroom situation. Like, you just have no idea. So, a, it's not appropriate to begin with, but two, like you never have an idea of who's recording or watching or listening. You just never know. So like if you wouldn't say it to your mother, you probably shouldn't say it on a radio.
Right. But here's one thing that I want to bring up as, you know, a issue. Like you said, you know, maybe in your case, you might would have never said anything. And to me, that is a protective measure because I mean, it's embarrassing. I don't want to
So
bring up
embarrassing.
something that's so embarrassing. But at the same time, I feel like if you don't call out somehow, somewhere, you also have to be careful how you do it. I think this was handled really, really
Agreed.
delicately because you're going to work with this people, right? Those
Mhm.
tags for the next few days. And if you
And
create
probably
this,
again, like this, the tech world is small. Like it's very
yeah,
likely she could end up on a crew with these people again.
exactly. So if you create animosity and unfriendliness and some kind of like weird dynamic, you're never going to be called on a show again. That's clear.
Yeah.
Like that's something that many women, you know, especially women behind the scenes in our community in technology and production, they have shared some crazy stories. I wish they would like, you know, use a form like this to share some of their stories, but some of those stories are for our ears alone where,
Yeah.
you know, you are afraid for retaliation and you're not going to say anything. You're going to try to protect your paycheck. You're going to try to protect your future in the industry by basically covering some of those behaviors, some of those many times predatory actions that happen behind the scenes that you might not even be aware of because nobody says anything just because they wanted to protect their next gig. And that is so unhealthy because it just keeps like going, right? It's this a cycle of in so many ways abuse, even though, you know, in this instance it sounds like obviously is more verbal but still like emotional and psychological. There's a lot of talk in our industry about psychological safety. So
Yep.
this is one of those examples like if you're getting into your show and your state of mind has been literally like tripped and destroyed by what was just said on comm prior to you going live, I mean it's almost like even your confidence levels get
Yeah.
attacked. It's like I'm being talked about things that have nothing to do with my job description and I'm being judged on that versus the skill set that I bring to the table. So I feel like it's such a delicate topic and not a lot of people talk about. So I'm glad that we actually have it, that we
Agreed.
are talking about it. So my question to you then, from a event leadership, event organizer point of view, I suppose, how can we create more inclusive and respectful work environments for our team members, regardless if they're behind the scenes, front of scenes, in the office, or they never see the event space ever, but they still
Yeah.
work somewhat in this industry somewhere?
I mean, I think the hard part, especially in this scenario, is like she's a hired technician. She doesn't necessarily work for the audiovisual company. She doesn't work for the organization
Mm-hmm.
putting on the event. So
Mm-hmm.
for her course of action, unfortunately, there's not a lot of options for her. What I would have handled beyond this point, first of all, the clap back, bravo, amazing, like best response possible. And then once the show wrapped for the day, I would either on comms, like say something, or if they had a debrief meeting in the afternoon before the call was over for the day, I would have addressed it. Or I would have gone to the lead project manager for the AV company and be like, hey, I don't know if you heard this on the call today, if you were on comms, or if this story was relayed to you, but I want you to know I was uncomfortable, that this isn't okay. You know, if this continues to happen, then I'm not going to work for your company anymore. And you know, I would even threaten to be very vocal about how their texts treat people. So I think it opens the door for conversation for it to be addressed. And then if the AV company is not addressing it, then I probably wouldn't work for them ever again.
Well, unfortunately, I do have a story that did not go well when I addressed some issues like that. It was during an event in Vegas a couple of years back, and I have not to this day worked with that AV production company. And I was freelancing. I think I was managing a bunch of their breakouts, and there's a lot of breakouts. Those breakouts were like ballroom size, large. And I did, have a situation where there's a lot of freelancers. I think it was about 300 of us. So it was a large conference. And I think there's a few guys on my floor that, I mean, they were like at first, just making, innocent, funny comments, but it got to the point where it started becoming like very annoying, where, there one guy in particular was literally making advances, like straight up an advance. And I felt uncomfortable. So I went and I talked to the lead for that particular conference. And I told him, hey, here's what's happening. This person has been saying those things. It's very uncomfortable. I really don't want to deal with it. Like, I'm not here to, engage in any of that behavior. I don't care what they do after hours. And I was told straight to my face that if I don't like it, I should leave. And that was for me memo. I'm gonna leave. Like, okay,
Yeah.
so if that's how you're gonna handle this, I understand maybe he's your friend or whatever, but that is still unacceptable. So that was my last day working with them. I mean, I finished the conference, but my last time where I work with them, and I'm like, nope, not doing this, and bye bye.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the right decision, but at the same vein, that sucks for you, right? Because
Right?
that's
Exactly. I mean,
a
that was a
whole
lot
stack of
of good
shows you're never
money.
gonna work. Yep.
Yeah, it was a lot of good money that was coming consistently for 2, 3 times a year. And I had to say goodbye to that because of that particular incident, the way it was handled. So I think this is where I need to bring up the importance of male allies. Now, throughout my career, I had some amazing male allies that have supported me, mentored me. So I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't also the other side of this conversation, where we have good men working this industry, and they're not here to take advantage of anyone. They're here to support women and men alike to advance in their careers. And I have, several of those that I can call. Ian is my mentor. He's been the first person I worked for back in LA. In my early days, I didn't know one thing about AV, but he taught me. So, Ian Ingram, if you hear this, my respect to you. And there's other people like Todd and Brian, people in my history that have been amazing and supporting me, helping me to learn and to really get to where I am today. So, that being said, I feel like in this situation, with our example here, if we had one male ally to say, hey guys, this is not appropriate, we should stop it, You need one guy to step up and say, hey, this is not okay. And I understand that, she's an attractive tech, doesn't matter. It's not okay to say this, not just on the comm, but in general. That's just not appropriate. So I feel like that's been missing from that interaction. If there's one person to be able to step up and say, hey, I don't approve of this message right now.
I love it. Yeah.
Maybe she wouldn't have had to go through this whole, embarrassing, try to protect myself and speak up for myself. Because let me tell you, speaking up for yourself is hard. It's not for everyone. I think it was a story somebody told me that they were working in a different industry in a male-dominated field, and they even changed their name. So it's a neutral name because she realized that if she kept her name, she would not be taken seriously. So she changed her name. For the rest of her life, she had a different name. And to this day, she's called by that name. But to me, that was like mind blowing because I never wanted to conceal my identity, even as a female in a male dominated niche, even at my own disadvantage in so many ways. Because I figure like this is who I am. There's power in that to just show up as you are and just kick some ass, right? But apparently that's very common, especially in finance and architecture. I heard tech, obviously, any other field that it feels like the balance is a little bit skewed. And for women to have to go to that measure to really change their name so they can, via email, sound like they're not females just for their credentials to be, accepted. To me, that's a bit ridiculous.
No, I couldn't agree with all of that more. I mean, I'm always willing to lose $1 today to gain $100 tomorrow. And I would rather walk away from the AV company that, didn't behave correctly and not work for them again and potentially lose the dollars to keep my morals and personally how I feel about it. Like, I would rather not take the money than sell my soul for a job.
Absolutely. With that, I want to go back to, psychological safety. There's actually training. I want to shout out to Event Minds Matter and Janice Cardinale. She has a mini course that for anyone that is working in companies that could use some workplace conduct and harassment training and clear policies around that. It's available. I think it's just $95 or $99, something like that. Highly, highly encouraged for anyone in HR, obviously. But I feel like for freelancers, that's still such a tricky place to be in because there's not a lot of protection for anyone that's working as a contractor. And that includes the harassment that sometimes happens behind the scenes and some of those offenses that are hard to track because nobody is talking about it and nobody wants to raise their hand to be the black sheep and then never be invited on a show ever again. So it is still a very hard,
100%.
situation to walk through. But I am so grateful for whoever spoke up and shared this story with us because it definitely took a lot of courage, bravery. You have my respect, and I really definitely appreciate it. And then I guess my last thought on this: can you think of any advice, Megan, that you could maybe give to anyone that might be finding themselves in a similar situation?
Oh, great. I think your point of having an advocate is always great. I've been through similar situations at work places where I didn't speak up. And then when I did finally get the courage to do it, there was retaliation. It was awful. I ended up having to leave my job. Like, it was a whole thing. I'm glad I made the decision, but part of getting through that was having allies there to support you. And so I think your call out of like, if you see this happening or you're hearing this happening, say that it's not okay. And men and women both, like, if you see behavior that's not okay, say something about it. It's the age old see something, say something. And it doesn't have to be to get anyone in trouble or to escalate a situation other than just to be like, this isn't cool. You got to quit. Like, and that's
Yeah.
really all it has to be.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about pre-fan event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.
Over the past 5 years, we've poured our hearts into the Events Demystified podcast, exploring the intersections of audiovisual technology, AI innovations, and the crucial role of mental and physical wellness in event production. We've also shined a light on the talented women working behind the scenes in AV. As we plan to deepen our impact and reach more listeners like you, we need your help to achieve this. Listen, tune in to any Events Demystified episode on Spotify. Follow, hit the follow button on Spotify to keep up with our latest episodes and updates. Review, rate, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify. Share, pass your favorite episode along to 2 friends who love crafting unforgettable events. Win. By following these steps, you'll be entered to win a $50 Amex gift card. Join us, share your voice, and let's demystify event experiences together. Your host, Anka Platon Trifan.